you to South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem.
Good afternoon. How are you all doing? All right, let's be honest. You people had no idea who I was a year ago. Right? Yeah, the first time you heard my name was because the liberals were busy kicking me in the head for all the decisions I was making in South Dakota, right? Right? Rachel Maddow, Elizabeth Warren, all talking about how I was irresponsible, I was reckless, I was a denier. But I want you to know something, that my people are happy. And they're happy because they're free. They're free and their freedoms were protected this last year. So I want to thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you and to share with you a little bit of my thoughts on the direction of this country. I'm going to share with you a little bit of how I made my decisions this last year. But in order for you to understand how I made those decisions, I think you need to understand a little bit about me and my background as well. So is that okay if I tell you a little bit of my story? Okay, great. And by the way, I love Virginia Fox. You guys send amazing people to Washington, D.C. So I want to thank you. Elect really bad governors, by the way. But, really bad governors, but you've got fantastic people in Washington, D.C. But Virginia Fox is one of the first people that I met when I first got elected to Congress. And I was kind of a little scared of Virginia. She was tough, and everybody told me she will tell you exactly what she thinks when she talks to you. And I said, okay, I'll be ready for it. And I remember one day we hadn't really had a conversation, and I walked past Virginia. I'd been in meetings for a long period of time, and we walked past each other in a crowded hallway, and all of a sudden I heard, Kristi. And I turned around, and Virginia was looking at me, and she said, go comb your hair. I was like, okay. So I went and I combed my hair, but I loved that. I absolutely loved that, because don't you sometimes need somebody to tell you that, hey, go comb your hair, get that black thing out of your teeth, or you've got lipstick all over your face, or whatever. You need somebody like that in your life, and that's Virginia. We became dear, dear friends. We went to Bible study together every single week, and she shares her heart with me, and I share my heart with her, and you have elected a tough woman who's doing this job for the right reasons. And she spends so much time writing personal handwritten notes to people and working on policy. I think every night I was still working in my office at 11:30 at night. Virginia was working later. And so I've got so many friends that you send in your delegation. Richard is fantastic. You've got Ted, Mark, Madison, David. I mean, all of them. Just thank you for doing that. Because when I was in Congress, South Dakota only gets one representative in the House. So I ran 7 statewide races in 8 years. And when you get to Washington, D.C., and you're the only representative from your state, it's a little bit lonely. You don't have a delegation that you can go to and talk to about state issues and stuff. So I always was building a coalition on whatever issue I was working on. With ag issues, there was a certain group I would work with. On other issues, there was women's issues. We do different stuff. And by the way, there's no women's issues, okay? Can we just take that off the table right now? There's no women's issues in this country. What there is a woman's perspective on every issue, on every single one. But anyways, it was a little bit different. I got to know everybody in the House because I was always working with other delegations all the time. The one advantage to being the only one from your state is that my delegation was always in a unanimous position. We always voted the same. And I was always right. So that was actually a fantastic part of the job. But I do have my daughter, Kennedy, here with me today. She's the only family member that could come. She's back here because she's working too. This is Kennedy. We were in Arkansas last night, and I forgot to introduce her. Yes, the poor forgotten middle child, right? How many of you are middle children? have been, yes, your hardship in life, I understand. I'm a middle child too. But Kennedy's down living in Nashville. She's getting her MBA at Belmont. But she's with me this weekend traveling, and I'm enjoying that. Okay. Listen, one thing we learned in 2020 is that leadership has consequences. All you had to do was look from state to state to see the difference of what happened to families and businesses based on what kind of leadership that they had at the state level. You look at Republican-run states, and they did much, much better than Democrat states. And you here lived with the consequences of the actions that your governor took. I'm so sorry. I am going to help you get a new governor. I will help you get a new governor. You know, ever since I was a little girl, all I wanted to do was to be a farmer and a rancher with my dad. My dad was tough. He was a cowboy. He was the kind of guy that woke you up every morning by yelling up the stairs, "Get up. More people die in bed than anywhere else." I don't even know if that's true, but... And he worked all the time. That's all we did as kids. We farmed a lot of acres, thousands of acres. We had cattle, had a lot of different businesses going. In fact, it could get to the end of harvest season. We could get done combining the last field of corn at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he'd say, "Kristi, go catch the horses. Let's head to the mountains to go elk hunting for 2 weeks." And that's what we would do. That was our vacations. So I loved it. He was my best friend. When I went to college, my dad was killed in an accident on our farm. He was 49 years old at the time, and it was absolutely devastating for our family. We were farming about 10,000 acres. Actually, the day he died, he had just rented another 2,500 acres. We had a cow-calf operation, feedlots where we backgrounded our calves, and had other businesses. But my sister was living in Georgia at the time. My brother was living in Oklahoma. My younger brother was still in high school. So I was the one who ended up quitting college and coming home and taking over the businesses. All I did was work because I didn't know what else to do. And I wished that I had my dad every single day to ask him questions of what I should do. I remember that just several months after he passed away, I got a letter in the mail from the IRS that said we owed death taxes. Now, we, like most small family businesses or ranchers or farmers, we had land, we had machinery, we had cattle, but we didn't have any money in the bank. And all of a sudden, I found out about these hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that I owed the federal government because we had a tragedy in our family. And it made me mad. I could not figure out how we could have a law that would double tax a family at a time when their family was already tragically disrupted by a loss. So I just started showing up at meetings, talking about policy. Started a hunting lodge to make more money off of our land so that we could figure out a way to pay off those taxes. My mom bought a restaurant because she thought that would be fun. I don't know if any of you own restaurants, but that might have been my least favorite business. That was hard work. But it took us 10 years to pay off those taxes. And it made it very difficult for us to keep our family business. People ask me all the time, "Kristi, how'd you get into government and politics?" It was that experience. I realized we needed more normal, everyday people showing up and weighing in on policy. Got passionate about tax reform. At the time, our senator was the majority leader in the U.S. Senate, Tom Daschle. Do you remember him? So I started showing up at all of his meetings, wherever he was, talking about tax policy, talking about treating people fairly and the government staying out of people's way. I ended up running for the legislature and won, got to the legislature. I was there about a week, and I realized that the leadership controlled everything. If I had a bill that they liked, they would send it to a committee of jurisdiction or a committee they knew they had the votes. It would pass out of committee, make it to the floor, and they'd support it over to the other house and potentially make it to the governor's desk. If I had a bill they did not like, they had a specific committee they could send that bill to where they knew they had the votes to kill it. And I decided if I was going to be away from all of my businesses, my husband, my kids, that I was going to be as effective as I possibly could, so I decided to run for leadership. Got elected to be the assistant majority leader and worked on rewriting our property tax system in South Dakota, worked on policy that was important for our state, and then people kept asking me to run for Congress. I decided to run for Congress after people asked for 2 years. My husband and I finally said, you know what, maybe we should just run. If we lose, they'll leave us alone. Because it was a tough race. It ended up being one of the top 5 races in the House that year. We had a blue dog Democrat that had about a 70% approval rating. And she hadn't voted for Obamacare or the stimulus package. All she had done is vote for Nancy Pelosi. That was enough. I talked about Nancy all the time, and it worked. We won. I was in Congress and, wanted to do tax reform. I served on the Armed Services Committee, worked on NDAA authorizations. I worked on farm bills, important policy for the state. Was thrilled when President Trump came into office because I got the chance to be on the conference committee that put more money into people's pockets and created a fair tax system in this country. Exactly everything I'd ever wanted to do, Donald J. Trump made possible. People ask me all the time, why do you love the president so much? I said, I love that man because he's the only politician that I've worked with that actually does what he says he's going to do, actually follows through on it. And he got up every single day and he fought for this country, and he fought for people, and he fought for you and me. And I appreciated that because I watch who's in the White House today, and he is destroying this country, absolutely destroying this country by what he's doing at the border, what he is doing with energy policy. I'm surprised you guys all found enough gas to get here today. Unbelievable. 65% of your gas stations didn't have gas. I can't imagine that happened in America this quickly. I knew it would be bad. I didn't know it would be this bad this quickly. But you look at their lack of support for Israel, it's amazing to me to watch the different policy changes and the immediate effects on this country. So this president, and took away my fireworks at Mount Rushmore. I don't know if you've been paying attention to that. Yes. So we've got a lot of work to do. But when I was in Congress, I was thankful to have the chance to work on big policies. But I also realized when I looked that governors are CEOs. Governors have the opportunity every single day to make decisions and immediately put them into place that impact families. And so I decided that I wanted to run for governor. I ran for governor based on the fact that we could do things like build strong families, and that we could be an example to the nation. That was my theme. I had no idea that South Dakota would get the opportunity to be an example to the nation because of a pandemic. But that's really when people first started to realize who we were. I believe that because we were small, we could do things that other states couldn't do. We could put in place pilot projects and programs and prove that they really worked for people and created opportunity and success, and really show the rest of the country that that would work. And so that's what I ran on, got elected, and I got sworn in January of 2019. We went into legislative session, which is only 40 days long in South Dakota. It's actually fantastic when you're governor. They come in for a month, we work 20 hours a day, and then they all go home and the rest of the year, and it's quiet in the state capitol. But I got one day out of legislative session and a bomb cyclone hit the state of South Dakota. Had any of you heard of a bomb cyclone before? It's 5 feet of snow on the western half of the state, 5 inches of rain on the eastern half of the state on frozen ground, and my entire state flooded. 63 of my 66 counties were declared federal disaster areas. Some of those counties 5 times over in just the year of 2019. So all I dealt with was flooding the entire year, and I thought for sure 2020 is going to be so much better. We had 2 days left of our legislative session, and we got our first COVID-19 cases in the state. Now, I had done what every other governor in this country did. I had studied the virus as it was in other countries, learned about it, talked to my health experts, watched as it hit other states. I had opened my emergency operations center in January, so we were prepared when the first cases came. I think what happened is that while I was doing what other governors were doing, is that I took it a step further. I spent a lot of time talking to my general counsel. I spent a lot of time talking to constitutional attorneys. I really wanted to understand what authority I had as a governor and what authority I didn't have as a governor. Because I believe that when leaders overstep their authority, especially in a time of crisis, that's when we break this country. That's when we break this country, and I didn't want to be the governor to do that. So for instance, in South Dakota, we never once closed a single business the entire time. In fact, I didn't even define what an essential business was in our state, because I don't believe governors have the authority to tell you that your business isn't essential. We never issued a shelter in place, never mandated anything such as masks. What I did is I stood up in front of my people and I said, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to let you use personal responsibility to make the best decisions for your family's health, but I'm also going to give you flexibility. I'm going to give you the ability to take care of your employees and your customers, and we're going to work through this together. It's going to be challenging, but we can do this if we all work together. I didn't focus on cases because the science of the virus told us we couldn't stop the virus. We could slow it down, but what our real goal was to make sure we had enough hospital capacity to take care of people should they need it if they got sick and needed that kind of elevated care. Now, Dr. Fauci told me that I would need 10,000 hospital beds on my worst day. On our very worst day, we had 600 people in the hospital. I don't know if you've heard this before, but Dr. Fauci is wrong a lot. A lot. So we got through it together. We held some incredible events, let people make flexible decisions for their family's health, and we kept our businesses open. Let me tell you how we're doing today. South Dakota has the least amount of hours lost by employees of any other state in the entire nation. The least amount of wages lost by anybody of any other state in the nation. We have the lowest amount of businesses that closed during the pandemic out of any other state in the country. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the nation at 2.8% in our state. In fact, when President Trump offered those elevated unemployment benefits, I said to the president, thank you for the flexibility, but we don't want it. People in South Dakota, they want to work. And even at that point in time, it was interesting because when I made that announcement, within 1 week, I cut my unemployment claims in half, which means the people who were on unemployment said, okay, I guess it's time to go back to work now, and they did. We have the fastest growing GDP rate in the nation. Now, the next closest to us is Texas. Their GDP rate at the end of 2020 was 7.5%. South Dakota's was 9.9%. We have thousands of people moving to our state, hundreds and hundreds of businesses coming into South Dakota. I could triple the size of my economic development department right now, and I couldn't answer the phone for all the businesses that want to move to our state. We have historic revenues coming in. Now, I don't have an income tax in South Dakota. I don't have a corporate or personal income tax, no personal property tax. What funds state government is a 4.5-cent sales tax. That's the taxes that we have. And my legislature this year, the big battles were over what to do with the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that they didn't anticipate that they were going to have, because everybody who wanted a little bit of freedom in 2020, they came to South Dakota and they spent time in our state, and thousands of them stayed, moved their families, put their kids in classrooms, and recognized how much they appreciated a government that respected them. So here's the story. We have talked for years about what conservatives believe. We've talked for years about we as Republicans believe in our platform and what it is. In South Dakota, We just did it. We just did it, and we proved that it works. We proved that it opens up opportunities for families, that it creates stronger communities that work together. We didn't have the riots and violence that happened in so many other cities in South Dakota. People worked together to get through the challenging year. They grew closer together, and our economy is booming. We set historic visitation numbers for people in our state. We sold a historic number of hunting licenses, fishing licenses. We have so many people coming into South Dakota, you couldn't hardly rent a car for 10 or 12 months in our state because so many people were there and so many people stayed. Our housing market has gone crazy because people want to be there. So this is what we need to talk about as Republicans, as conservatives. No longer do we have to stand up and just point to statistics and data and facts and say, what would happen if we were in charge? You have a unique opportunity because in 2020, you had the perfect example of what can happen when you have good leadership, Republican leadership. And you have the perfect example of what happens when you have bad leadership and what Democrat leadership can do and how it can devastate people, their lives, their families, their businesses, and their way of life for generations to come. If we don't tell those stories, then shame on us. Because right now, the American people are hungry. They're hungry for something that gives them hope. And what gives them hope is the Republican Party. Because Democrat leadership has failed them and never failed them as greatly as it did in 2020. So I'm going to ask you to do 3 things for me. I'm going to tell you a story and then ask you to do 3 things if you will. Okay? Back in 1773, there was a young man who was named Nathan Hale. Have any of you heard of Nathan Hale before? You know, he was a young man who graduated from Yale with honors. In 1775, his 5 brothers signed up to fight for the Continental Army in the Revolutionary War, and just a couple of months later, Nathan himself signed up as well. It was interesting because he quickly rose through the ranks and was promoted, because he was recognized for his leadership skills and his courage, and how people just naturally followed him. General Washington was leading the fight of the Continental Army right then in the war, and frankly, they were losing. They had learned that there was about to be a British Army invasion in Manhattan, and if they didn't win that battle, potentially the Continental Army was going to lose the war. So what General Washington did is he brought all of his troops together, and he stood in front of them and he said, I need one volunteer, one person that will go in undercover behind enemy lines and gather intelligence so that we can be strategic and win this battle when the British try to take over Manhattan. Out of all those troops and men standing there, only one person stepped forward to volunteer to be that spy, and it was Nathan Hale. He disguised himself as a Dutch school teacher. He went in undercover behind enemy lines and was gathering information from the enemy, relaying it out to the general to give the Continental Army the information that they needed when his identity was discovered. He was quickly captured, brought before the leadership, and condemned to die, sentenced to hang. Historians still write about that situation, talking about how incredible it was that throughout that whole process of being behind enemy lines, being captured, being sentenced, and brought before those who would end his life, the composure that Nathan Hale had, the dignity that he had, that he never once compromised General Washington and his fellow brothers in the Continental Army, that he stayed true and kept what he knew to himself. His very last words, as reported, were that I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country. So listen, folks, we don't know what hard is. We just don't. I don't believe that one man can save this country, but I believe that we all have our part. I watched people in 2020 roll over and give up their freedoms. The media used fear to control people, and the left used fear to promote their agenda. They proved to us that they will do anything to get their agenda put into place. And I watched people across this country just roll over and give up their freedom of assembly. The government told me I can't meet with anybody anymore. Okay. I watched people say the government tells me I can't go to church. Okay, they took away their freedom of religion. People gave up their freedom of speech. We have done a poor job educating people about the protection of these freedoms. Throughout the pandemic, I did press conferences every single day, and I would give updates, but some of those press conferences changed because I realized I couldn't just say what I was deciding. I had to tell them why I was making that decision. I gave a whole press conference just on freedom. I gave another press conference just on the Constitution and what rights it protects and what role we shouldn't be looking to the government to do. I did a whole press conference on people turning off the news, getting some perspective, going for a walk, spending time with their family. We need to educate people about what has made this country so special for hundreds of years. Our founding fathers were flawed, absolutely they were. But they led our country through challenging times, and we can learn something from every single one of their stories, and they gave us the greatest gift that was ever made in the history of mankind, and that is this country and our freedoms. We need to teach our kids that honest and true history. We need to make sure that they understand the value of the Constitution and the foundation that it gives us for our way of life. So there's 3 things I want to ask you to do. The first one is to say yes. Now, this world's going to tell you you're too busy, that you've got too much going on, that you can't sign up to do more things, and I'm going to tell you the exact opposite. We need you to say yes. We need you to go support that candidate. We need you to show up at that meeting and tell your story. We need you to run for office if that is what is placed on your heart or somebody asks you to do. I remember when my first daughter was being born, they had a baby shower for me at a lady's house from our church. And they had all these ladies in the room sitting around, and they went around the room and had everybody give me, the new mother, some advice. How many of you have been to a baby shower? Okay. Okay, can I tell you something? I went to a baby shower the other day, and there was men there. So when did that happen? It was, you know, and it wasn't as fun. So it was a really bad idea to start inviting men to baby showers. So listen, men, if you get invited to a baby shower, don't go, okay? Just stay home. It was... Anyways, when they were going around that baby shower, it got to my grandmother, who is a German woman. She was very tough and stern. And what she said when I got to her is she said, Kristi, say yes as much as you possibly can, because so many times as a mom, you have to say no. And that shocked me that she would say something like that. And I decided I wanted to be a mom who said yes. So I didn't want to be the mom that was constantly telling my kids no. So if my kids wanted to jump in a mud puddle on Easter Sunday in their dress clothes, we would jump in a mud puddle. If they wanted to race down the driveway, we raced down the driveway. But I also applied it to the rest of my life. I decided that when people were going to ask me to do something, that I would say yes to it, that I would go. That's how I ended up serving in the legislature. That's how I got involved in tax reform discussions. So many of you are saying no to things that you should be doing. You think somebody else should be doing it. You don't think that you would be good at it. I am a farmer, and now I spend a lot of my time working on policy and giving interviews and giving speeches. I wasn't prepared for any of that. I just started showing up. You may find you have a gift or a talent that you didn't know that you had. You may meet somebody at that meeting that will change your life forever. Could be your next business partner, your next mentor, somebody that makes all the difference in the world for you, your family, your county, your state, or your community, or your country. So say yes to those opportunities when they come. The second thing is that this country is addicted to being offended. We love to be offended, don't we? By everything everybody says, oh my gosh, I can't believe they said that, that's terrible. You know, get over yourselves. Okay. We just need to get over yourselves. I had a pastor years ago tell me, Kristi, people are going to throw offenses out all the time at you. You're the one who decides if you want to pick it up and carry it around with you. But then you're the one carrying the burden. You have the opportunity to make a decision each and every time to just walk by that offense and leave it lay there and let it go. So I need you to get over yourselves, because there are people in this country that we have quit talking to. We have gotten angry and emotional, and we just wrote them off and said that they're a lost cause, and we quit talking to them. I need you to stop. I need you to put the emotion and the anger aside. I never made a good decision when I made it out of anger or out of emotion. And walk up to people that you haven't talked to in a long time and have a conversation with them. And the first thing you need to do is listen. Listen to them, because nobody in this country feels like anybody's listening to them anymore. And then share with them the statistics or the facts or the stories of really the consequences of leadership. So number 2 is to get over yourself. Number 3 is to be happy. We woke up this morning in the United States of America. We woke up better off. We woke up better off than 99% of the people in the world just because you woke up here. People will be drawn to us by our optimism, by wanting to be around us, because they need hope. They need somebody who understands that while we've got incredible challenges, we're still amazingly blessed to be in the United States of America. And we need to remind them of that. So those are the 3 things that I need you to do. Number 1, I need you to say yes. Something's going to make you uncomfortable that people are going to ask you to do, and I don't even want you to think about it. Just say yes and go do it. The worst thing about being an elected official, and I tell this to people openly all the time, is asking for help. It's hard. When you're used to making decisions and running businesses, it's hard to go ask people to come volunteer or financially support you or come alongside and help you. But we have to do it. I tell people all the time, I promise I will be a good investment. I will win. I will do it. But I can't do it by myself. I need your help. There will be people who will come up to you and ask for your help. Walk beside them. And it's hardest on the families as well, so support their families and do what you can to make sure that we approach this next election cycle different than we did in the past. Number 2, stop being offended by everything and writing people off. Open up conversations. They may be liberals, they may be people that you work with, they may be Republicans in this room that you quit talking to because you were mad about one issue. Get over yourself, okay? Let's come together and let's focus on defending this country and protecting it. The last thing is show them the joy that you have in your heart, because you know that what we believe as conservatives is truly what brings opportunity and success and builds stronger families, and is what America was founded on. And what we're talking about today is still the greatest blessing that we've ever had the chance to be a part of. So be optimistic, be happy, and spread hope. This country desperately needs it. So thank you so much for letting me be with you today. God bless you. God bless North Carolina, and God bless South Dakota and the United States of America. Have a great day.
Wow, how awesome was that? Okay, we've got a little bit of homework we got to do, a couple of announcements we got to make.